Good morning. My name is Leslie Santapaul, and I am honored to be your worship associate this morning for my very first time. Thank you. So, in courtesy to everyone, please be sure that your cell phones are in worship mode. We welcome everyone here and online to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Roanoke, with a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. We hope you'll stay after the service for coffee in the fellowship hall back there. And if any of you are cold, we have a few wraps, or there could be a basket out in the front with some wraps, so help yourself. Let's all take a minute to stand and wave to the folks that are at home, as we usually do. Now, those of you online who wish to share your joys and concerns during the Lifelines portion of the service, please put them in the chat line in the next 15 minutes. Thank you. We acknowledge that our church resides on traditional lands of the Tutelo and Monacan nations and was later farmed and developed through slave labor. We recognize and respect the ongoing connection to this land by generations of Black and Indigenous peoples of color. May our gratitude and fellowship here echo and honor that rich history. Our minister is the Reverend Walter LaFleur, and he is out on medical leave, as you all know. Please join me in reciting our words of welcome. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you express your identity, whatever your situation in life, whatever your experience of the holy, as you come seeking love, your presence here is a gift. Whether you are filled with sadness or overflowing with joy, needing to be alone with yourself, or eager to engage others, all who welcome all are welcome here. And now our covenant. We commit to supporting each other with respect and direct communication as we work in community to explore spiritual growth and to be a force for good in the world.
Good morning. Our opening hymn is not number 30. It's number 38. But you have hymnals, but the words will also be on the screen above. Let's join and stand in singing.
A reading from a book by Wallace Stegner called Crossing to Safety. Whatever happened to the passion we all had to improve ourselves, live up to our potential, leave a mark on the world? Our hottest arguments were always about how we could contribute. We did not care about the rewards. We were young and earnest. We never kidded ourselves that we had the political gifts to reorder society or ensure social justice. Beyond a basic minimum, money was not a goal we respected. Some of us suspected that money wasn't even very good for people. But we all hoped, in whatever way our capacities permitted, to define and illustrate the worthy life. And now something from Adlai Stevenson. He lived from 1900 to 1965, and he was a Unitarian. He once observed, "I believe I can offer one important testimonial, and that is that having spent the last 12 years in public service, I have become more and more conscious of the importance of the Unitarian groups, Unitarian communities. I don't mean just our church services, just our worship, but Unitarian people who appear in my life constantly. They're the sort of people who do the advanced thinking, who are, for the most part, rocking the boat, who are cutting the furrows, who are ahead of the procession in contemporary thought in our country about our great social and political problems, as well as our theological discussion. This is an active agent in the body politic that is most necessary." Our speaker today, who suggested that quote, and I think it's very apt, is Bill Hackworth. He has been a Unitarian Universalist for 46 years. He started here in Roanoke in 1978, and he has served as board president, vice president of the board, and in numerous committees. He and his late wife, Judy, were charter members of the UU Church in Williamsburg, Virginia. They had 2 children, Andrew, a gastroenterologist in Newport News, and Elizabeth, a lawyer in Maryville, Tennessee, even though Bill tried to convince her not to be a lawyer. And between them, he has 5 grandchildren. Bill and Ann have been married for 22 years, and they first met in the 80s when Ann was in the choir. And I'd like to have a little shout out to 2 of their great friends in the audience, Roberta and Bob Johnson. They're joining us from Bent Mountain, and some of you may remember them from a few years ago. They were attendees at Bill and Ann's wedding 22 years ago. Bill retired from his position as city attorney of Roanoke, where he served for 12 and a half years. And there he provided legal counsel to the city council, city administrator, school board, and many other city boards, commissions, and agencies. Before that, he was the York County attorney for 11 years. He was assistant city attorney for Roanoke for 10 years. From 1975 to 1977, he was a trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. His first job in the early 70s, after graduating from UVA with a master's in public administration and a JD in law, was as a law clerk for the Honorable Ted Dalton in the U.S. District Court, serving Charlottesville and Roanoke. Bill's first college degree was a BA in the Political Science Honors Program at Ohio State University in 1970. He has been a member of more professional and honor societies than I have time to mention. He's published more than 17 articles, and my favorite title was Diffusing IEDs, Inflamed, Enraged Discourses During Public Hearings and Citizen Comment Periods. Bill served in the U.S. Army Reserve as captain in the field artillery. He's been in too many clubs and received too many honors to list, but I do need to give him time to speak. A few clubs and organizations you might like to know about: the Roanoke Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the Ballroom Dance Association, Friends of the Parkway, the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy, and the Greenway Commission. He has also been in several Friends of the Library groups. An impressive yet humble man. Bill says that being able to help people makes work worthwhile. And just because something is legal doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Bill? Yes, sorry. Oh, the chalice life, sorry. It's my first time. Forgive me. Susie will now light the chalice.
Well, Malin has the right idea. I'm going to invite up all people who are young or young at heart to join us at the front. So I have a question, really quick. What kind of things do you guys think UUCR does? Help people. What kind of things does the church do? Ooh, create safe space. Motivate what? I'm challenging you because you're a teenager. Motivate what? People around us. You know, once upon a time, this church saw that young children who were black didn't have many opportunities in the summer. And they said, you know what? We have mostly white kids here at church. Wouldn't it be great if we put on an arts camp so the two cultures from Roanoke could come together and make art together? Yeah, I see your face lighting up. That's really cool, isn't it? What do you guys think they needed to do that camp? Money. What else? Time. Teachers. And I bet a lot of them were volunteers to save some money. People willing to put up with kids. So for those of you who don't know, the teens had a lock-in last night. So that includes me. We had a lot of fun. A lot of love. So part of what we do to show our love and part of what all these people do every Sunday is take up an offering. It's money that goes into a basket so that we can do what we do. Over here, we're talking about our generosity campaign and the different things that are happening from people in the church that are giving time, money, they're teaching, they're volunteering, and they're loving this church and this community. This morning, we're going to do a noisy offering. You guys are going to get a very loud bucket. And everybody out there has some very loud money to put in that bucket. We are going to take up an offering. And when your bucket is full or mostly full, you're going to meet in the back of the church underneath the clock. Don't forget the choir. Go ahead and pick your bucket and go. Thank you, everybody, for participating in our noisy offering. We're going to actually go upstairs and talk a little bit more about the work that the church does and our generosity campaign. But we put our noisy offering exactly where the offering goes. But don't worry, ushers, we will count it.
Well, another quote by Adlai Stevenson is that words are so easy. Not really. Action is so difficult. I would like to introduce our speaker, Bill Hackworth.
Good morning. It's good to see so many familiar faces. I started to say old faces, but I won't do that. As Leslie said, I joined this church in back in 1978, and I'd only been a member for a couple of months when I was asked to get together with a couple of others and present a sermon. The topic was a very fascinating one. It was called Energy Conservation in the Home, which was a subject I actually knew very little about because I'd only owned a house for a couple of months too. Apparently it was part, if I remember right, it was part of a series on stewardship of the earth, so maybe it wasn't too far out. And that's part of the joy I found about being a Unitarian. You come to church on Sunday and you never know what you're going to learn, what you're going to hear. I know you know that's true. Well, I know a lot more about energy conservation now than I did in 1978, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Tomorrow, March 25th, marks the 70th anniversary of the actual organization of this church. Back then it was called the Unitarian Fellowship of Roanoke. So I'm going to reminisce a little bit about where the church has been and where we might be headed as a church. But if we really want to party today, we could claim we are 110 years old since the very first Unitarian church in Roanoke was founded in 1914. And it unfortunately only lasted about 14 years when the minister retired. 20 years ago, I wrote and self-published a history of the first 50 years of this church, and I titled it The Unitarian Universalist Church of Roanoke, 1954 to 2004, 50 years of service to the larger community. Now, I picked that title because it reflected the then mission statement of the church, which stated, "We are a diverse, caring community, nurturing our members in their quest for spiritual growth and living our faith in service to the larger community." If you don't have a copy of the book at home, I put copies out here in the foyer. They're free, so please take one with you. I have several left. Our denomination's commitment to serving the larger community is what drew me to the UU denomination. Back in the mid-'70s, when I was working up in D.C. as a civil rights trial attorney with the Justice Department, my late wife Judy and I paid a visit to the UU church there in Arlington to hear the then Congressman Joseph Fisher, who was just an outstanding advocate on social issues. He was a member of the church. We really liked what we heard at that church and its commitment to social justice. And so when we moved to Roanoke shortly after, we sought out this church, which was at a different location at the time, and both of us became very involved with it. Now, most of us probably take for granted today that our church is an accepted part of what is now a really very diverse community. This hasn't always been the case. In writing of our church's beginnings, the religion writer for the Roanoke Times back when they actually had one, wrote that the few persons who dared start a congregation in Western Virginia were strangers in a strange land. And it's true. I just think of some of our own local heritage, and just to mention one thing. Between the two world wars, Roanoke's chapter of the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, the Robert E. Lee Klan No. 4, was one of Virginia's most active chapters. In 1931, the state KKK convention held in Roanoke was a 2-day affair attended by more than 3,500 Klan members. They paraded, over 2,000 of them paraded downtown, and the parade was broadcast on local radio and reviewed from City Hall by the mayor and other dignitaries. Back when our church was in its infancy, a truckload of furnishings were donated to us by a disbanded Unitarian fellowship in Monroe, North Carolina. The small fellowship there, which had flourished in the late 1950s and welcomed blacks to its programs, had been vandalized and crosses burned on its grounds, leaving it to disband. During the same period, the UU Church in Knoxville began an integrated summer camp program so that black and white children could get to know one another. The location of that camp had to be moved from time to time because the KKK put bombs in mailboxes and left threats. When the same church shared its facilities with the Metropolitan Community Church, an inclusive church, its windows were shot out. So for many reasons, it must have taken a little bit of courage back in 1954 when our church was organized, largely due to the efforts of Dr. Howard Sackett, a local veterinarian, and there's a memorial to him and his wife in our memorial garden. It also must have taken a bit of courage in 1960 when our then tiny congregation of 40, consisting of only 17 families, pooled their resources and bought the church's first building down on Old McVitie Road. The 1960s, of course, was a period of social action against segregationist policies in this country. Unitarian Universalists were at the forefront of this movement. In March 1965, Selma, Alabama became the focal point of this action when, for the first time, white residents there, many of them who were members of the UU Church there, demonstrated for racial justice. After the Selma to Montgomery marchers were brutally beaten and tear gassed, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put out a call for ministers of all faiths to converge on Selma to make possible a march to protest police brutality and the non-registration of black voters. Our part-time minister at the time, Greta Crosby, wrote to the UUA expressing her anguish at not being able to participate because she had a new baby. But she pledged to cover the airfare of someone who could attend. I'm sure this was a sacrifice since we were only paying her $400 a year, which included mileage. This was a Harvard Law graduate. The UUA estimates that 1/5 of all UU ministers went to Selma. Among them was 38-year-old James Reeb, an assistant minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. Reeb was familiar to our church, having preached here 4 times. Those of you who remember Helen Goodekunt said she became a member of the church after hearing Reeb preach. Following the march to Montgomery, Reverend Reeb and 2 other white male ministers were viciously attacked on a street outside a whites-only restaurant in Selma by 4 or 5 white men. 3 of them were later charged, but all of them were acquitted by an all-white, all-male jury. After Reeb died of his injuries, a memorial service was held with Dr. King delivering the principal eulogy. The entire board of the UUA and an estimated 103 Unitarian ministers and almost an equal number of UU laypersons were present. That very evening, President Johnson delivered his "We Shall Overcome" speech to a joint session of Congress proposing the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was enacted a few months later. 10 years, or a little over 10 years after that, I found myself in Mississippi with the Justice Department monitoring compliance with the Voting Rights Act and being shocked to find that blacks were still being intimidated to keep them from voting. Fortunately, in Roanoke, racial tensions never became violent, but everyone with any understanding was aware that only a tenuous and delicate balance kept the situation from exploding. Desegregation in Roanoke came about mostly due to the quiet efforts of citizens and community leaders of both races, although it did take a court order in 1970 to fully integrate our city schools. Our part-time minister at the time, Alfred Beardsley, was one of the leaders in this effort, although I understand from others that he wasn't always so quiet about it. So given all this backdrop, consider what is often remembered as one of our church's biggest achievements. Jesse's mentioned it already, the integrated summer vacation arts camp that our church began with 2 one-week sessions in 1968 and continued through 1977. Phyllis Harhold, a member, had envisioned and organized the camp, and Sally Garber, I'm glad is here today, and Jane Haddad were involved. And by the way, they're, along with Bill, are the 3 longest members of this church. So they remember what the vacation arts camp was like. 12 white and 12 black families participated in the first year of the camp. Many from the community assisted. Cabell Brand and his wife did a presentation, as did the artist George Solanovich and prominent black educators Julian Moore and Bill Robertson. As many as 125 children at a time were enrolled in the camp. Renee Marie, the noted jazz singer, who just did a concert a couple of weeks ago here in Roanoke, and her brother participated. The late Jenny Banks related to me one time that some of the, well, it was a little awkward to get this going because many of the blacks had not socially associated with whites. So Jenny said, for instance, the black women always came dressed in what she called church clothes, while the UUs were in shorts and T-shirts. So, that's familiar. Barbara Landon remembers that when the local paper, which her husband became editor, when it published pictures of black and white children holding hands at the camp, it generated negative phone calls and letters to church members. So those were the days. You know, I'm very proud of what our church has done in a long history of service to our community. And I'm going to list just a few things. I know I can't list them all. But, you know, at our former church, we started one of the first 2 art galleries in Roanoke, and it was very popular. It was quite innovative. One show featured shopping bag art, and another one I remember very well featured various renditions of Mabry Mill. It was, the whole show was Mabry Mill. In 1972, we started a coffee house. We used to put on public film series. We put on plays. We had 12 seasons of the Conspirito music series, and we sponsored a lot of other events for the public, festivals, exhibits, and concerts. For many years, we sponsored a memorial society that encouraged planning for one's death and acquainted the public with the full range of funeral services available. It was interesting. I found an article in the Roanoke Times from back then where local morticians, I won't mention any of them by name, were not thrilled to have this competition from the UU Church. But we've sponsored refugee families, scout groups, we've cleaned up roadways, helped build habitat houses, we collect blood for the Red Cross. We've made our building available to many organizations, service groups, and other churches. Our members have volunteered to serve meals to and host the needy through programs sponsored by the Roanoke Area Ministries and the Roanoke Valley Interfaith Hospitality Network. We've taken up collections for numerous local service organizations and programs for disaster relief, We've collected for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and local public radio, where we advertise that we live our faith through service. We became a welcoming congregation back in 1997. For many years, we hosted the Sierra Club with the well-attended Earth-Friendly Fridays, where we are a member of the CIA, the Congregations in Action, with other churches along Grandin Road, joining with them to support programs like the Pack a Snack program and Reading Seeds. In the past, we have supported things like the Nuclear Freeze Initiative, and Jim Olin was a leader of that. We've supported women's rights and those of the LGBT community. We've opposed handgun violence. If there was a war, we've usually been against it. Currently, we have 3 successful missions. One is Reading Seeds. I hope you all know about that. Started 12 years ago, which has supplied thousands, if not tens of thousands by now, of books to Head Start children and children in the early grades of city schools in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And some of the volunteers actually go to the schools and read to the children. We have the Green Team, which advocates for our Earth, sponsoring rallies for the climate and green energy. And we have the Racial Justice Team, which has sponsored teach-ins against racism. And they've joined with Williams Memorial Church to conduct a series of anti-racism workshops. They also sponsored the Pledge Against Racism, which many of us signed. Our members always seem to be out there rocking the boat, writing letters to the editor and letters to our legislators. They stand vigil around the city market building in support of plowshare peace. And just this morning, in the front page of the Roanoke Times, I hope many of you saw this, it gave me pause for a minute, Unitarian Church to hold Defending Democracy event. I thought, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard about that, but it's actually the Blacksburg Church. I hope you'll take a look at the article. This Thursday at 1 o'clock, they're having this event at the Blacksburg Unitarian Church. And I was proud to see one of our longtime members, Sarah Dalton, who now lives in Blacksburg, is one of the sponsors of this event. So I think Ann and I are planning on going, and I hope others of you are interested. Maybe we can carpool. So as individuals or in groups, members of our church have been involved in countless social issues in our community, and I've only cited a few that I knew of. To me, it's always been deliciously ironic that the Reverend Jerry Falwell, founder of the Moral Majority and the emblem of the religious right, was represented for 10 years in the U.S. Congress by a pro-choice, pro-ERA, pro-nuclear test ban, Democratic Unitarian Universalist. And that would be Jim Olin from our church. Falwell didn't like having Olin represent him, so he tried to unseat Olin in one of the elections. But the voters elected Olin by a landslide anyway. He got 64% of the vote over one of Falwell's lieutenants. In the same year, George Bush carried that district, or our district at the time, by 61%. So Olin outpolled George Bush even. You know, in the earliest days of the church, we've met in a variety of places, including the downtown YWCA and the Patrick Henry Hotel. We should put historical markers down there. We're in our second building, which the Mormons dedicated back in 1948. I just have to mention this. The elder who came from Salt Lake to dedicate the building was Ezra Taft Benson, who was a John Birch Society member. He was pretty much a racist. And in fact, George Wallace tried to get him to, when Wallace was running for president, to get Benson to be his vice presidential candidate. When we bought this church, the Mormons desanctified it, so I guess they don't have to worry about about that. Over the years, we've had 4 different names, and we've somehow managed to get through 11 ministers in that time, part-time, or some part-time, some interim. So now that we've survived 70 years, what challenges do I see facing UUCR down the road? Well, obviously one important task will be to settle a new minister. At some point, the board will be seeking applicants for members for a search committee to find a permanent minister. If you're interested, I would encourage you to apply. Having chaired such a committee, I know that it can be time-consuming and somewhat daunting task. I've always said that it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm going to stick to that. But I am happy to report I'm still speaking terms with the surviving members of that committee, and we were able to bring in the Reverend Kirk Ballin as a result of that work. Another challenge we have is this building, which the Mormons dedicated in 1948, which happens to be the same year I was born. As with various parts of my body, the warranties have long since expired on some of the parts of this building, and we are eventually facing the prospect of having to renovate, remodel, and possibly enlarge the building. Having been a part of the effort to acquire this building back in 1985, I'm confident that whatever direction we take, we'll be able to achieve it. Looking at a broader picture, we need to ensure the church is on solid footing to continue to grow and prosper. Nelson Harris, whom many of you probably know, the minister of what is now Heights Community Church in Grandin Village, is a friend of mine. And when we see each other, we invariably compare what is happening in his church and with our church. And one time I asked Nelson why they had changed the name from Virginia Heights Baptist Church to Heights Community Church. He related that their church had done a self-assessment and concluded that a substantial part of the income that supported the church came from older members who weren't going to be around forever. They realized that if the church didn't broaden its membership, it might not be able to sustain itself. And I would question whether we're in the same boat. 34 years ago, over the course of 1 year, we had 169 children from 86 families enrolled in our RE program. Now, some of them may have only come once or twice, but 169. Now, I look around today, I usually see very few children here. Something to think about. One of the things Heights did was to move to having 2 services. They have one a contemporary service, they call it, with lots of music, and one a traditional church. But I believe they've been pretty successful in what they've done. But looking at a broader picture, attendance at most churches in America is down as a result of COVID, and it hasn't recovered. Also, Americans these days are just not joiners of organizations, including churches and synagogues. Ann and I have been members of 2 local organizations that have folded or are about to fold just for lack of members. We've all died off. A recent study found that 53% of Americans are not actual members of churches and synagogues. They're leaving the traditional churches because of scandals, schisms in traditional Protestant and Catholic churches, and political issues. Studies show that younger adults are far less likely to belong to a church than older ones. Even in Roanoke, and many churches are closing. You may have noticed some on the market for sale, some of the buildings for sale recently. Another study concluded that in 40 or 50 years, if current trends continue, a majority of Americans will be religiously unaffiliated, taking over Christianity as the majority in this country. There may be a bright side to that. Maybe this is a fruitful grounds for Unitarians to attract members. There's still plenty of work to be done in our community and our nation that calls for leadership, combating racism, homelessness and poverty, gun violence, drug addiction, book banning, climate change, our environment, anti-LGBT laws and policies, bringing an end to wars, immigration issues, and even preserving democracy as we know it. To conclude, I think you can realize the Roanoke Valley would have been much poorer without the contributions that our church and its members have made over the last 70 years. I hope we will continue to have the kind of vision that Doc Sackett had in organizing our church back in 1954, and the courage that the 17 families who bought our first building showed, and the commitment shown by so many over the years to our church and the principles for which it stands. I think you will agree with me, there's still a lot to be done, but to me, it's all part of being a UU. So happy anniversary, everybody. Thank you.
Talents and treasure of many people. Your kind donations will help us to continue many years of service to the larger community. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sally Garber. It's my honor to represent the Caring Committee this morning. I'd like to be sure and remind you to please let the Caring Committee know of any joys or concerns. And been a special plea for your joys so that we can share those in addition to your concerns. You're welcome to do that by either emailing or calling me or calling the church office. Thank you. I have a very special thing to share with you this morning. Today is Betsy Biesenbach's 65th birthday. That's a major joy. And a second joy is tomorrow she'll use her new Medicare coverage to have a cyst removed from her spinal cord. Thank you, American taxpayers. So we got lots of joys this morning. What I would like you to do next is if you have a joy or concern that you're holding in your heart, please come forward during the music meditation and light a candle and use both sides of the altar as you do. Will you help me, please?
My friend Dorothy Hall was going to read one final piece, but she was not able to be with us today. She said she's having a tremendous amount of pain in her knee. So I would like to read this. This is from a book that the Living the Question read several months ago. It's called After the Good News, Progressive Faith Beyond Optimism by Nancy McDonald Ladd. And she is a UU pastor in Bethesda, Maryland. This is ascribed to Victoria Safford. The Gates of Hope. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, not the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, not the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges. People cannot hear us there. They cannot pass through. Not the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything is going to be all right, but a different, sometimes lonely place, the place of truth-telling about your own soul, first of all, and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world, both as it is and as it could be, as it will be. The place from which you glimpse not only the struggle, but the joy of the struggle. And we stand there, beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see. Now, does anybody have any last-minute announcements? Okay, now. Oh, yes, we do have one. That's Celeste. Here we go.
I know it's kind of chilly in here today, and I appreciate everybody being patient and trying to bundle up and come in for the service. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have the beginning of the work on the boiler done. My fingers are crossed that they will show up, that they will take it apart, find the problem, and it won't cost us another arm and leg, but that is a possibility. So tomorrow morning at 7:30, I'm going to let them in, and they'll take the boiler apart and look at the corrosion and find out where the leak is happening. So I'll keep you updated as I learn more.
Thank you, Celeste. Yeah, great news. Great news. Well, I know that one thing I would like to highlight, the generosity campaign will be meeting right after the service in the gathering room there, and that's at 12:15. Yes. Oh, Catherine.
The Generosity Campaign information meeting will be here
Oh, here.
in the sanctuary
All right.
at 12:15. Come learn about our budget and all the fun stuff we're going to do to raise money.
Thank you, Catherine. Very good. Okay, and at 12:15, outside, the Green Team rallies on Grandin Corner. Thank you, Green Team. All right, if there are no more announcements, I would like to turn the mic over back to Bill Hackworth for our oh, I'm sorry, after our music.
Our closing hymn is Fire of Commitment. The words are on the screen, and I know that you've heard this before, so let's all stand and sing. Stand and
Steps our mind
years in her job at the church.
May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. Or if not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you.
Maybe we'll finally see, even to question.